welcome. I'm James Young. I'm from McCain Foods, just up the road in Scarborough. But I'm also on the board of GB Potatoes. So it's on their behalf that I am delighted to welcome you, first of all, to this seminar this morning. I won't read the title, but it is very close to my heart, obviously. And, you know, a very hot topic, actually. Lots of the debate and discussion already that's out here at the event this morning is about consumption demands and trends, which are obviously essential for the success and the growth of the industry, but under some pressure at the moment. So it will be fantastic to delve into that a little bit more over the course of the next hour. And it won't really be me doing it, because I'm also delighted to introduce the two speakers that we've got this morning. So for GB Potatoes, and I think Graham's in the room somewhere, to have organised these seminars, I think is fantastic. But in particular, the two speakers that I'm just about to introduce are going to be extremely valuable and create some really interesting discussion, hopefully. So we are a bit late, but I will try and leave and try. I'm not normally a facilitator or chairman, but I'll do my best to try and facilitate a bit of time for questions. So please do be ready with some. First up will be Cedric Porter. So Cedric will be known to many of you, the editor of World Potato Markets, amongst many other things as well, but a stalwart of the food industry, really, actually, as well as just potatoes, and the sender of my most eagerly anticipated email that drops into my inbox at the middle of every week. So it's great to have Cedric here in person. Some of the other aspects of Cedric's career as well, notably the involvement in Leaf, I've always admired as well over the years. So thank you for joining us this morning, Cedric. And I'll just bear with me 1 minute as well, because I'll introduce also Dr. David Hughes, who will follow Cedric onto the stage for the second of the two presentation. David's often called Dr. Food, so you will have come across, I'm sure, at various events. David is the Emeritus Professor of Food Marketing at Imperial College London. And reading his brief and the CV, his globe-trotting and his awareness and understanding and work that he's done in various far-flung corners of the world will provide a fascinating insight. And that's, again, all around food and consumption and retail. And I'm sure we'll get into potatoes in more detail, but perfectly qualified to speak to us this morning, but hopefully, as I say, also provoke a bit of debate and discussion. So that's enough from me, I think. As an intro, I think the kind of basics of the room. There's no fire alarms planned, so if you hear one, we're straight back out the door you came in. Please keep phones to silent. What else was there, Graham, on that list? So, yes, basis points, sorry, and then Rosso, desk out there as well. Toilets as well. I'm sure you've already found the toilets, those of you that have been here as long as I have this morning. Anyway, please, would you welcome Cedric to the stage? Thank you.
Thanks, James. I think we're muddled up. Hopefully, we've got this. Yes, yeah, we have got my presentation. So let's just start off with a bit of a language lesson of potatoes in languages all around the world. Papa and pomme de terre, and I'm not quite sure what the Korean is for potatoes, but hopefully, if you've got any other names for potatoes, then let me have them. Right. So, World Potato Markets every week, as James says. Well, I'm glad that it's so well received. Every week, put together a analysis of what's happening around the world of potatoes, not just in the UK. And if you want to know more, please see me afterwards. So let's just have a look at as we look what is going to be on the plate and putting more potatoes on the plate. Just really what some of the trends are this season and perhaps looking into the next season as well. So this is the figures that we have in terms of planted area for potatoes and yields, and I'll give you a figure of production as well. So I think we're a little bit lacking on figures. Lots of other countries, and I think in AHDB times we had some great figures in the UK. we're down on those a bit now. So other countries have better figures than we do now. DEFRA figures are a little bit out of date, so I would urge you all to engage with the GB potato survey in terms of how you sort of see the industry and where it's going and how much production there might be. But just looking here, this is our sort of assumption. So a small increase in the potato area, maybe about 4 or 5% this year. Yields pretty good, pretty reasonable, sort of long-term average sort of plus yields. These are sort of DEFRA figures from last year, and I, amongst other people, think that they were probably a little bit overestimated for 2024. So I've left another 2024 figure in there, and that sort of increase there. So we're hovering just over the 100,000 hectares of potatoes actually sort of planted, 100 to 105. And so 107 in 2025, that's what we're sort of saying, and that's perhaps a little bit more than some other estimates. As I say, this isn't an exact science. Potato production, there we go. So last year, DEFRA assumed there was a 5.1 million ton crop. I think most people assumed that was probably a little bit larger than others. We were sort of saying a 4.7 million ton crop. This year, probably just under the 5 million ton crop. But if you look to where we were, I mean, you go back to the beginning of the century, and we even had a 7 million ton crop there. We still need, and we still consume more than 7 million tons of potatoes in the UK. We're one of the biggest potato eaters in Europe and amongst the world. But more and more, those potatoes are coming from elsewhere, as we'll see in a minute. This is something I updated from the 2020 figures for the AHDB 2020 figures. Last time we had those, and this is the sort of assumption where we were in 2025. I didn't do it for 2024, but 2023 there, and there is some production figures there. So as I say, around about 4.9 million tonnes probably in the UK, and the split in terms of those where those type of potatoes were, so the two large crops, the pre-packing and the processing, around about sort of 1.8 to 1.9 million tonnes of each of those. And then a big seed crop this year. I mean, Scotland had one. I think its largest seed area in 2024 and going into 2025 as well. And no problems with that in terms of production, perhaps overproduction of seeds for Egypt. So that's one of the issues that we've got this season. This is just where we are in terms of rainfall. Don't really need to tell you it's been a very dry year. Up until the end of October, England had only had about 80% of its normal rainfall, and the eastern region, where most of the large-scale potato production has only had 70%. So that is quite significant in terms. There we are. That's the up until the end of September. So only about sort of 70%. So we need that rain, but I suppose it's always be careful what you wish for. We need it, but it could sort of stop at the end of January, I think. So if we can sort of order it for a wet Christmas rather than a white one, and then sort of ending at the January, so it can then sort of dry out for planting. Figures and on prices, and I thank Potato Cool for these figures. And there we are in terms of, so these are October figures, 2025 October figures, a lot less than they were in October 24 and 23. And from those sort of peaks as they were in May, if you go back to the peak back in May 2024, when crops of more than 600 pounds a tonne. So a significant change in the pricing regime there, around about 30% less, but probably in reality it might be even lower than that as well. Just in terms of exports and imports, just I thought I'd add this. It's pretty small compared to what it used to be. Only 150,000 tonnes exported and around about 100,000 tonnes imported. So for a large potato consuming country that's not producing enough of its own potatoes, they're pretty small figures. And these are fresh potato imports and trade. So we'll go on to the processed figures, because that's where most of the imports are coming in from. Here we are. This is UK imports of fries. Fries, we're the only, I think it's just us in Australia, the only one who call chips chips. If I talk about chips in America, they always think they're crisps. And then if we get muddled up with pints and tons and quarts and this, that, and the other, it gets very, very confused. But here, in terms of where we are, so around about 850,000 tonnes of frozen fries, chips, are imported into the UK every year. That makes us the second largest import market after the US, who import over 1 million tonnes of frozen fries. And so that's making up for that sort of that gap in production is in terms of processed product. And you'll see here, there was Brexit there was Brexit and COVID then, and I think we were underestimating the number of fries that were coming in before Brexit, because of the way the single market was and the customs union was, they weren't being counted. So that really sort of accounts for quite a lot of that large increase there in terms. So these are 12-month figures. And so they have slipped back a little bit. So we did peak at around about 870,000 tonnes, now down to about 850,000 tonnes of imports. So unfortunately, a lot of those potatoes that are on the plates, particularly in food service restaurants, if you go into a food service restaurant or a quick service restaurant, or not perhaps so much McDonald's, because I know a lot of that is supplied, but if you go into a lot of restaurants, the chips you will be eating will probably be Belgian or Dutch rather than UK ones. This is just putting it in context, production in terms of potatoes in the EU, and what that production is there. We talk about the EU4 here, and that's Germany, France, Netherlands, and Belgium. And they now account for 2/3 of the production of the whole of the 27 countries of the EU. And so that's been, since the beginning of the century, gone up from less than half to more than 2/3 now. So Europe has had its largest crop largest crop of this decade. And so it's not quite a wash with potatoes, but there's plenty of potatoes there. And that's obviously having a big impact on the market. Impact on the market here, I think those 24 miles of the English Channel do help, because if you're bringing in potatoes, there's always that extra cost of bringing in from there. So our prices are lower than they were last year, but they're not as low as they would be on the continent. And this is what's driven the increase in production in those EU4 countries. I've added Poland into this to have the EU5, and them as a group export more than 6 million tonnes of frozen fries. So that's more than 12 million tonnes of potatoes equivalent. But they have actually seen a slight decrease in the exports as well, and we'll go on to see what some of the pressures are on European growers as well. This, in terms of pricing, so I think potatoes, free buy potatoes, and the futures markets for potatoes must be the most volatile commodity of any commodity in the world. So you go back. This was a peak in last season. If you had the season before that, the prices peaked at about 600 euros a tonne. They peaked at about 300 euros a tonne last year. That's that little blue mark at the bottom there. That's where they are now. So they're around about 15 euros a ton. So you've gone from 600 to 15 euros a ton in the space of 2 years. I don't think there is any other commodity that has that difference. Of course, most potatoes, particularly processing potatoes, around about 70% are on contract, and this is the contract price. So this is in Belgium. So the contract price is that obviously goes up through the season. The darker figure is the contract for this season, the lighter figure for last season. So those contract prices have held up, and I think that's what's going to save growers in Europe this year, is how much they are growing on contracts. Next year, we're already seeing perhaps a sort of 10 to 20% reduction in contract prices there, and I think that's inevitable that we will see a reduction in the area, reduction in production, and probably an increase in the free buy price. But overall, does it sort of match up? If you're selling 70% on contract, 30% on free buy, how does it match up? So you could actually see farmers in Europe making more money this year than next year, even if the free buy prices is higher, because the contract prices are lower. And I think you've seen great increase in production in France, and I think you will see some potato growers who will have grown potatoes for the first time ever this year, and they will have had their fingers severely burnt and probably want to keep away from potatoes forever after that. So I think that's going to impact that there will be less area next year, but we'll have to see what that does to pricing. And I just wanted to show what's happened in terms of on a global sphere. So this is quite extraordinary. So China is now on the way to exporting 500,000 tons of frozen fries a year, and that has doubled. So they're over 300,000 tons. That's doubled in the last year. Similar, not quite such great growth in India, but that's putting real pressure on the global market. So you're seeing that pressure in Europe, you're seeing that pressure in North America, and the prices of Chinese and Indian fries are lower. James, you might want to close your ears. I was in America recently. We had a tasting of Chinese, Indian, European, and US fries, and we really couldn't tell much difference between so if you're sitting in a restaurant, and if you're a restaurant owner, it's on that sort of price, so you're going to be tempted to be buying Chinese and Indian fries. These are very, very big numbers, but if you look at these two together, they are still only they're only exporting not much, around about sort of 15% of what. So they will export the EU5 will export more in a month than these two export in a year. But I think it's that exponential, it's that growth that they've got is sort of really threatening and upsetting the global market. So lots of talk. A lot of these companies are actually working with companies from Europe and North America. So it's a bit of a sort of an international market. And frozen fries are very international because, once you've stuck them on a boat, they can sit in a restaurant freezer for a while. They don't take too much to prepare and cook. So they're a very global, international, and very desired. No one ever complained about having too many chips, so the restaurants love them. The same restrictions on. Yeah, I suppose it's what are they actually like as the product when it arrives. Well, that's what the market, and I suppose the market, it sort of takes that into account. And as I say, a lot of these are working with international companies. And if you look at what the farms that they are producing from, and this might be what's actually holding some of their growth back, some of the farms that they'll be on large-scale farms that not significantly different from a farm in Idaho or in the Netherlands, and using the similar sort of techniques. I think, yeah, it's something that we have to be aware of, and but you have to be very sort of careful to have the facts and figures when you are accusing people of that, because if you just say, well, it's yes, yeah. Because of those regulations. Yeah, but I suppose it's going to be very difficult for us to roll back from that, because we can't, you know, there's a public desire for that. And then do we then sell ours on, we're not accusing them, but we sell you on the high standards that we've got and whatever. That might be a question for James. So just a little bit on seed. A lot more seed around this year across Europe. So around about sort of 10% extra area of seed in the maiden seed growing countries, including Scotland. So there is that seed around. I think a lot of that seed, off-contract seed, will be a lot cheaper. Controlled varieties, perhaps not that much cheaper. I think the temptation will be for some growers to grow more because they've got cheap seed, but if they can resist that, then the prices might be better. I think the worst thing is we had two very oversupplied, low price seasons across Europe. That would be very difficult. This is just a little bit on costs. We're seeing an increase, and actually AF, the farmer co-op, they said the greatest increase in for any of the sectors was an increase in the potato cost of growing potatoes. So fertilizer costs in particular increasing. Crop protection costs are down, but fertilizer costs going up. So it's not, as we know, it's not a cheap crop to grow. So again, that's another reason why people will be thinking how much they're planting. Prospects 2026 reduction in the planting area can be expected around about 5%. So probably getting around to about that 100,000 hectare area, and average yields about 4.7 million ton crop. Still one of the smallest on records, and we could, you know, like a 2.5% drop in area, 4.8 million tons. So still not enough potatoes for our needs, but it's that those imports affect that. But there is still plenty to celebrate. I use this one a lot, and in terms of what is in the plate, and I think there's a lot of messages that we can have in terms of potatoes, and I know GB Potatoes are doing a lot on this. In terms of nutrition, it's still, you know, the most complete food you can get. If you really wanted to live on two types of food, I'd say eat cheese and potatoes, and drink water, and you probably do as well as you could on anything. And in terms of value this year as well, a sort of an extraordinary way of feeding your family deliciously. And all the things you can't do with potatoes is there's a longer list of things you can do than things you can't do. You can even make clothes out of potato haulm now. So potato pants, they'll be on the market soon, I think. And so there's plenty to celebrate and plenty to push out for people in an age where people are concerned about the cost of food and very much concerned about the nutritional value of food as well. Could you actually, rather than having Monjaro, could you be eating potatoes as part of a weight control diet in terms of resistant starch and things like that? So lots of things to explore, which I know David will do splendidly in a minute. So just a few final thoughts. 2025 crop, a little bit larger than last year, still less than 5 million tons. Contracts, I think, will be really important, and negotiating those contracts is going to be important. and also for the buyers to actually have enough potatoes in the next season. Europe, we're very, very much affected by Europe, and a little bit sort of signs that the imports of fries, that sort of plateaued at least. High cost of production, but in that sort of time of high pressure on family budgets and things, you know, the potatoes have got a real place to play for that. And 2026, we are probably going to see a smaller area and a smaller crop. So there we go. Thank you very much.
Everyone's found that interesting. The porter diet of cheese, potatoes and water sounds kind of appealing. I'm not sure it'll fully take off, but great to end on a positive there. So thank you, Cedric. And set the scene nicely about the market, as it were, for us to hand over to David now to talk about consumers.
Pop this on. It's on. Yeah. Good. Great. Delighted to be here. I've come from Wales. In terms of rainfall, by the by, I live in Monmouth. So it was a diluvian disaster. And Marks and Spencer's little food hall and Waitrose, chest high. And just going through at a rate of knots, I tell you. But there we go, and half the town was sort of swept away. Right, I need the fiddle thing. Great. So this will be the... Thank you. It's always apprehensive following Cedric because he knows a lot about potatoes, and you know, you'll find out. But that's another matter. So off we go. Up. Ben, help me. Right. FAO figures, I never really believe them. What it shows that in terms of potato consumption in the UK, we're not in medal positions, but we do pretty bloody well, frankly, versus the rest of the... so there you can see the heavy-duty Eastern European consumption, but we're at around, Cedric, is that right, 70 kg per capita, something? Yeah, you know, that's... yeah, we take them pretty seriously, so, you know, let's not be too sort of long in the mouth. And... here we go. Look, every month come the first Friday of the month, I look at FAO's. They have this sort of global food price index. It just shows what's happened to food prices around the world, and that's over about a 50, 60-year period. You can see back in 1973, just below real, we saw prices peaking, and then prices drifted down over the next 30, 40 years, only to peak again in, do you remember March 2022, where suddenly, wow, they were up at such a rate. When it comes to consumers, what are they worried about? Not so much about how prices have increased relative to last year, but it's pre-COVID versus now. And they're saying, look, food prices are a third higher than they were pre-COVID, and my wages aren't. And that's vexing a lot of people. And so, just sort of popping back at you. So those high prices, brilliant. Farmers, you must be just going, whoopee, you know, terrific time. Well, actually not quite. So higher global food prices, happy farmers around the world. No, it doesn't matter where I go in the world, you've got grumpy farmers. You often get grumpy farmers, but they're particularly grumpy just at the moment across a wide range. Although actually if you're in livestock, meat, beef, poultry, you've got a bit of a smile on your face. But if you're growing the feed crops that they consume, then you're probably very grumpy. So farmers are protesting around the world. And in the UK, I mean, as I've just returned, having been away for a couple of months, that there's a lot going on at the moment, which is very long-faced, whether it be Minette's has yet to have her report published, but that'll be coming probably pre-Christmas. But then McCains has done its own survey showing that, you know, farmers have been really, really squeezed. And as I say, is this a problem? It's certainly not just a British problem. And is it all about Mr. Trump? Well, not really. I mean, he is just chaotic, for goodness sake. And again, internationally, what's intriguing is because it is chaotic as a tariff policy, that wherever I go in the world, you can see big food businesses are saying, we want to invest, but we're not going to do it right now because we're not sure what's going to happen next. Whether you've been Australia, New Zealand, Brazil, doesn't matter. They're saying, we'll just hold off for the moment until there's a little bit more stability in terms of international trade policy. Cedric, you put the AF stuff up, and yes, what does it show? It shows that ag inflation is continuing to run above food price inflation in the UK. You know, you can see why some of you are grumpy, for goodness sake. Moving on. But, so, you know, there's the Trumpian thing, but I mean, the big issue for me is what's happened in terms of climate. And if I look on the right-hand side, again, every January I follow whatever the World Economic Forum has to say just before the Davos meetings. And they're looking at big business risks as they see it over the next 10 years. And for 2025, looking to 2035, the top 4 were related to the environment climate, which is sort of worrisome. And then when you look at the simple graphs there, I mean, you know, you do not have to be a meteorologist. And for those who say it's a lot of nonsense, climate change, just, I don't know how they can get there. Just, you know, look what's happening in terms of, it's frightening, for goodness sake. Not particularly frightening for me because I won't be around to actually do anything about it. But, you know, if you're in your 20s and know you're going to have to cope with all this over the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And what this has driven is concern all around the world, but particularly in the UK at the moment, about food security. So hang on, with food prices, they're up everywhere. There are increasing commodities which are in the hands of 2 or 3 countries. What happens if something goes wrong there? What happens if they have a climate disaster? What happens if there's a political disaster? So so in the UK, we run at about 60% self-sufficient. If you look at indigenous type food, so food that we actually can produce ourselves, you know, let's be fair, we're no good at bananas, so you know, let's take those out. Then we're about 75% self-sufficient. Where does most of our imports come from? We get fussed about Brazil and Australia and maybe the US. Actually, most of it comes from the EU. And when we look here on the right side, and picking up what you mentioned, Cedric, I was astonished too. We're about, you know, 60% self-sufficient potatoes. And you think, really? Thought we were really good at that. You know, that it's a good place to grow potatoes. Wow. Goodness me. Moving on. And then I love to use this. It's just the National Food Strategy, the Dimbleby report, if you will, where they just took a map of the UK and, you know, how do we use our land? As you can see, beef and lamb pastures, that's the area, not the specific area where we have beef and lamb pastures. So we're very good at growing grass, clearly. But what intrigues me, if you look at the area down to potatoes, it's on the left-hand side. There we are with the Scottish Islands. And what I find intriguing is that we've got about the same area of acreage in hectareage in potatoes as we have in golf courses. You know, oh, right. That may explain why we're 62% self-sufficient, apart from anything else. So there we go. And the right-hand side is the area of land outside our own country that we rely on to produce the food that we import. And it's about the same size as our total area. So just by the by, good one to tell your children. Moving on. So should we be long-faced? Well, I mean, what's intriguing is that consumers, looking at AHDB stuff, are happy with you lot. You know, they think that they're very positive in general about farmers. They trust you, not quite as much as doctors, but, you know, substantially more than journalists, Cedric accepted, and politicians. But, you know, you're well up. And what's more, there's some increasing evidence that particularly younger, so when I say younger, that's under 40, that's young for me, under 40, have got a very positive view of farming. And I think there may be an element of the Clarkson farm effect here, one way or another, that they say, yeah, you know, that's, I'm interested in food and farming. That's what the younger ones are saying. However, what we found difficult is to transfer that into their preference for our own products. And on the left-hand side again, when it comes to buying food, I prefer to buy products that have been produced in my own country. Who's top of the list for that? And it's no surprise it's Italy. I mean, Italy has such a strong food culture. I mean, Italians don't even think they've got Italian food. They think that they've got the food of their province, of their region. So if you're in Puglia, then you think, you know, the Tuscany stuff's crap. You know, it's all about sort of Puglian food. But so Italian, they're right at the top, and we're third from bottom. But we're not bottom, but mind you, 50% plus of people say they prefer our food in the UK, and we're well above Singapore and Hong Kong, who of course don't have any agriculture at all. That's sort of by the by. And I was in Brazil in October. Somebody put this up, and I just took excuse the screenshot, and it was saying which countries dominate the world's dinner tables, and it's sort of exporting cuisine culture, they say. And so around the world, that you're more likely, it doesn't matter where you go, you know, Bangkok or KL or anywhere in Europe or the US, it's Italian food is more likely to be on the menu. And then Japanese, Turkey perhaps surprisingly, Mexico, Thailand, France, Egypt. And we're nowhere near the bottom, but we are, you know, pretty far down. And I say around the world, few diners say excitedly, let's go out for an English. I mean, not even in England, for God's sake. So, you know, there's clearly, we have a sort of food culture issue in the UK. That's a very long-term thing to fix, I can assure you. And so I haven't mentioned potatoes, let's get into potatoes. I use this, Cedric, you might remember in Adelaide when we were together at the World Potato Congress last year. As diets become more international, traditional carbohydrate options may be squeezed. So I live in Monmouth with long-suffering Susan Hughes, and on a Sunday, we get Tesco to deliver for us Monday morning, and Sunday night, Susan and I sit down and say, so what do we fancy to eat for the evening meal next week? And the conversation will go, I don't know, maybe, you know, Italian Monday, right, okay. I like doing Asian cooking, so Tuesday, say a Thai or a Chinese, and so we work our way through. And then having done that, it predetermines, if you will, what your carbohydrate option is going to be. And so, you know, because it could be rice, it could be noodles. And potatoes are important to us, but getting less important. So diets become more international, traditional carb options get squeezed. For the main meal dishes, actually, it's more about the sauce. I do a lot of work in meat, and so the default meat becomes chicken. If you're going to put a strong sauce on something, why buy beef? You know, why would you pay 3 times more when you can just buy chicken? The children wouldn't know. No clue. No. So there we go. And what's more, you see how our market's going. Here we are in Waitrose before it got flooded in Monmouth. If you look down here, Thai, Korean, Indonesian, Chinese, Indian, Italian. You won't be able to read this here, but it's a short little piece for Australian and New Zealand food, and we just call it pies. So, but you can see that, you know, that it's the ready meal or the meal components. Moving on. And then, I mean, what I've noticed too, if I look back over the last 20, 30 years, is the growth of social media, the impact on children, not least. If you look at the rise of Korean music, Korean food, children here, you know, with spicy ramen, artificial spicy chicken flavor, you know, whoopee. But it's huge. It's huge. Booming interest in K-pop and Korean food. That's not particularly good for potatoes, it happens. Moving on. Okay, so back to the UK. If we look at we've got 68 million or so. We're all in households. If you split between income house per household by quintile, then there's huge polarization of income in the UK. There is in every country I go to. But down the bottom end there, 20% of household income is being spent plus on food. At the top end, it's 5% or less, frankly, and it's the same. So there are income haves and income have-nots, and that will determine what they will purchase. So, for example, I just put myself into, on the right-hand side, say, okay, say I'm an income have-not, and I have to buy food for the family. I mean, filling family stomachs tastily, but cheaply. is a huge driver. And I'm afraid that nutrition gets pushed a little bit to the back. It's about minimizing cost per calorie. So in this particular case, I thought I'd buy 2 Hearty Food Company cheese and tomato pizzas. I mean, this week, they're 58p each. I mean, how can you put something in a package for 58p? So times 2, okay. Tesco breaded chicken nuggets, 30 pack, and Tesco French fries. We know where they come from. Absolutely certain they'll be from Holland or from Belgium, maybe France. But in 2 years, maybe China. Who knows? And so Tesco can feed a family of 5 for less than £5 for Aldi price match. I mean, that's astonishing. We have the lowest food prices in Western Europe, and our food price levels are at the same level as Eastern Europe, which are relatively low income countries. That reflects the competitive position of our market, which is manic, absolutely manic. Moving on. Okay, so allow me to just put this up. This is aspiring Gen Z. If you're 13 to 30, you come into Generation Z, if you will. Here's a picture of the boy at the back is my youngest grandchild, and it was on his birthday. That's Ethan, and he was having a sleepover, if you will, with 5 of his mates. And his father sent me that picture with a nest of boys. I thought it sort of described it well. And I noticed that all of them had the phone in their hand and one eye on the phone and one eye on the TV. And I just sort of reflected back on, there aren't many advantages to getting ancient, and I'm in the ancient category. But now I can look at 4 generations, my mother, me, my children, who are in their early 50s, and my grandchildren, and just look at the changes I can see directly. So my mother, for example, God love her, in the early 1950s, she would go to the grocery store, and I'll use a word here which you're probably not familiar with. Do excuse me, particularly the younger ones. She used to go to the grocery store, and she used to buy things that she called ingredients. Ethan will never buy an ingredient. He just won't. He will not. He'll buy a meal component or a meal. And his definition of convenience, my mother's definition was, she'd sort of blush and say, I buy sliced bread. That was her definition of convenience. For this lot, convenience means now. How do you mean now? Now. Right now. Well, could you wait? No. I want it now. And so, for example, can I see Ethan going to a grocery store and ever buying fresh potatoes? You wouldn't know how to. He'd need help, for God's sake. So this generation, as they become responsible for self-feeding, they'll seek instant meal and snack solutions. I know that's not pretty, but I just believe it's happening. It's happening around us now. I can see it. Okay, and so put all this together. This isn't just a UK thing, for goodness sake. I was in Asia recently. I was talking to a Thai guy who was running a business in Vietnam. His wife was a professional manager in Vietnam too. They had 2 small children. And I said, who does the cooking in the evening? The maid? And they looked at me and said, oh no. I said, well, how do you cope? He said, oh, we just use Grab. And Grab is Uber Eats. And I said, well, just every now and then. No, every night. From restaurants we know and trust. So a combination of Uber Eats, go to Wimbledon where my elder boy lives, the 52-year-old, and 6:30 at night by the tube station in Wimbledon. How sad am I? I counted 280 motorbikes which were waiting to deliver food. That's and particularly with the rural you're far from urban areas. So recently I've been talking to farmer groups and said, hands up those who have an air fryer. Yeah, good. Thank the Lord. I mean, I was in Sussex with 30 farmers, not one put their hands up. And there was, what's an air fryer? I mean, do McCain know what an air fryer is? Damn right they know. Yeah. So, I mean, what you see, this is around the world. It's not just a UK thing towards the meal component, etc. Yes, here's McCain with air fryer, quick and crispy. Air fryers have revolutionized fast food at home. And I'm saying, here you are with McCain, say it only takes 10 minutes. McCain's know that's too long. They're just trying to, Ethan's not going to wait 10 minutes for anything. He just isn't. Potatoes, the world over, I mean, they're hugely popular. I was in Bangkok talking recently. The world's best flavoured fries with their snack sizes, Terra, Giga, Mega, Jumbo, Large, Family, and Wimpy. I had a Wimpy portion. And there isn't an Asian country where chips fries aren't going gangbusters, frankly. What about the health problems associated with food? Well, of course, pardon disruption. Now we've got anti-obesity medication, AOM. That isn't necessarily great news for potatoes. It's a challenge for carbohydrate food because people have smaller portions and don't think that just the odd person will be using anti-obesity medication. No. Once we get into particularly where you don't need to inject, so you can just tablet form, I don't know, I mean, it's 25% we'll be using it. Because we need to, because 45% of us are round as puddings. There we go. And then quickly, just Tesco online, 14 fresh potato stews, and what an astonishing, that is 66p a kilo. I mean, what? Goodness me. But then if I look on there, I just put in mashed potatoes. And now, how many of the price range? If you went back 5 years ago, there'd be 2 SKUs. Now there's 35 SKUs or whatever, somewhere or other. There's just a lot of them, and what's more, they're astonishingly affordable and good. Moving on, what did we learn that for Americans? Yes, go to Kroger, which is the number 2 retailer in the US. There are 324 mashed potato products on Kroger's this week's website. Jesus. But look, fresh potatoes, they've never been a feast of retail theatre. Wherever I go, you think, oh my, you can fall asleep in front of the potato section. Some in America, they try their best, but still, it's let's move on. There are companies around the world that, and indeed within the UK, that do their best at retail. Cedric knows this well. The Little Potato Company in Canada they're brilliant at what they do with fresh, but that is getting smaller and smaller. And we could bring theatre. Here I am in Thailand. Eat me. It was brilliant for Japanese sweet potatoes. Just encourage people. Just make them feel good about it. And if you've got a bona fide health attribute, why not shout about it? I mean, I can't remember ever going into a retail store in the UK and there being any sign telling me what the health advantages are of eating fresh potatoes. Yeah, well, I'm saying bananas are famous for the potassium content, and medium baked potatoes twice the potassium of medium banana. And we're very shy about telling people Zespriant with the kiwi fruit 3 times the vitamin C of an orange. I mean, for goodness sake, cucumber. We never say anything about cucumber until you go to Boots, or yes, it's still called Boots, isn't it? Where it becomes a pharmacy with health and beauty products. John West buy Scottish salmon, and what does it say? 1 Caledonian Gold salmon fillet provides your weekly omega-3. We're hopeless at that sort of stuff. And look, if I look around the world, almost done, promise. And again, it's not very palatable, but you see polarization in terms of household income, but also in terms of size of business. So here we've got the top 10 world's biggest packaged food and drink companies, actually. And JBS, which have been doing neat work, so excuse it. JBS, the meat company, number 1. And then all the way down. Do we see that in crop production, in horticulture, not sure exactly how you call potato production. Well, we certainly do potatoes. I mean, there are like 4 mega companies, and for my mind, the best one is sitting right here. And, you know, I'm not on their books, I tell you, but they're really bloody good at what they do. But then if you look at Simplot, and you look at Lamb Weston, and then the European ones here, they're huge. They're absolutely huge. And I don't see any sign they're getting smaller, they're getting larger, for goodness sake. Same in crisps, or chips, as the Americans would say. But essentially, there's just 2, for my mind. If you look at PepsiCo, I mean, what a hold they have on the world crisp chip market. You know, fabulous in what they do. Yes, there is a Japanese big player too, but there we go. Do I see this in horticulture? Well, increasingly I do. I mean, for goodness sake, here's Taylor Farms from the US, marching its way across Europe, just picking off horticultural companies. What about in our own country? I mean, great companies. Look at the Shropshire family. They're just close to £1 billion turnover in the salad business. How many countries are they in? You know, a dozen. So it's a big deal. It's large getting larger. So what? It means if you're tiny, then you've got to find a partner. You want to get under the wing of somebody, or alternative, if you want to go you're alone, then make sure you've got a point of difference which is defensible. And I'm not sure, you know, you can do that, but it's not easy. And that's a lot. So, and thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, David, Cedric. I could sit and listen to both of you guys all day, but thanks for wrapping up, David. We have got a few minutes, actually. We had a late start, so we've been given the nod, and I know some of you might want to go, so I understand, but we can just carry on a little bit longer because I'm desperate to open it up for questions, comments, feedback. You know, how do we make sense of all of that? Such a lot of content. So again, thank you guys. You know, it's been really, really insightful. How do you kind of knit that together to be optimistic? And that's where I am actually thinking about it, thinking of Cedric's penultimate slide with all the positivity on it and all the trends, which it's easy to get worried about that we heard from David. But if you distill that, then potatoes in one form or another have still got a really important role to play. So I'm seeing the positives in that, not just because he was bigging up McCains, but anyway, thank you. But I'd be really interested if everyone else is, or is there some new challenges in there, anything we're not thinking of, anything that's particularly inspiring, or any questions for these guys, then please, let's open it up. I think in the interest of time, please do ask for the microphone if you prefer it, but I think it'd be easier just to shout. So anyone want to kick us off?